Hello and welcome to Lunchtime Politics, reaching you live from our global headquarters here in the nation's commercial nerve center, Lagos. I'm Jeffrey Uzonga. Here are the big stories we're tracking for you at this very hour. The legal face-off between the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, the Efcc, and some state government continues at the Supreme Court, where the latter is challenging the legality or otherwise of the anti-graft agency. What happens next? The chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, Ola Olukoyede, says Nigeria lost $500 million in 2022 to cybercrime. 6 concerted proactive measures to repurpose the skills of perpetrators. Thanks again for joining us on the program. We call it the midday gateway into the polity of Nigeria and perhaps around the world. But we'll start from the nation's capital, where an event is ongoing. And so some excerpt from that particular event today. The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission is advocating for synergy to redirect the skills of young persons involved in cybercrime following the revelation that Nigeria lost about $500 million in 2022 alone to cybercrime. Now, the chairman of the commission, Olukoyede, says the global estimate of nefarious online action or activities will reach billions of dollars by 2025, as it's estimated to compete with the global GDP. That's how big the scale of cybercrime is. Mr. Olukoyede gave his submission for needed action at an ongoing National Cybercrime Summit, which is ongoing at the moment, and seeks alternatives to cybercrime by optimizing cyber skills for national development in Abuja. The event has in attendance the wife of the president, Oluremi Tinubu, senator, who is speaking at the moment. The state governors are also represented there, members of the National Assembly, young persons, including core members, among others.
Projections by multiple sources show that the global loss to cybercrimes may reach a staggering $10.5 trillion. As a matter of fact, the research I did earlier this year confirmed that cybercrime has become the 3rd largest GDP in the world, with approximately 2,328 cases occurring daily. The implication of all this is that if left unchecked, cybercrimes portend grave dangers to the entire world. Bringing it to Nigeria, in 2022 alone, Nigeria lost over $500 million to cybercrimes. These are the realities stalking the Commission's fight against these crimes. Cybercrime accounts for a significant percentage of the 3,455 convictions recorded by EFCC in my 1 year as the executive chairman of EFCC. A significant portfolio of choice assets have also been recovered and returned to both local and foreign victims of cybercrimes by the Commission. We are not oblivious of insinuations and misconceptions in some quarters that the Commission is concentrating its operational works on the fight against internet crimes. While this narrative is not really true, the fact remains that cybercrime threatens the nation's most significant assets, its reputation, economic well-being. The losses by the financial services sector to cybercrime in the last 3 years is mind-boggling and staggering. We cannot continue to sit idly and watch the integrity of our institutions compromised and our youth degenerate into living lives solely dependent on crime. The future of our nation cannot and will not be allowed to hang in the balance. We must take collective actions against cybercrime.
So that's the summation of the EFCC chairman saying that this has to move from just convicting and sending them to jail to repurposing their energy and making a case for the commission. Let's move on now. This also involves the EFCC. The Anambra state government has announced its decision to withdraw from the suit that is seeking to declare the operations and activities of the Economic and Financial Crimes, that's the EFCC, illegal. It was instituted by the Kogi state government and joined by about 15 other states, which is being heard at the moment at the Supreme Court. The Anambra State Attorney General, Professor Sylvia Ifemeje, told the Supreme Court that it was no longer willing to be part of the legal action against the establishment of the anti-graft agency. The withdrawal notice was dated October the 20th. Anambra State took the decision on the day that Osun State, through its Attorney General, applied to be allowed to consolidate its grievances against the operations of the EFCC with that of Kogi State. Osun State told a 7-member panel of the Apex Court led by Justice Owani Abaji that it is seeking the same relief that Kogi State listed against the EFCC, whereas Sokoto State, which was earlier joined as a co-plaintiff in the matter, did not send any legal representative at the resumed hearing today. Other states that announced their appearances today are Kogi, Kebbi, Katsina, Jigawa, Oyo, Benue, Plateau, Cross River, Ondo, Niger, Edo, and Bauchi. Others are Adamawa, Taraba, Ebonyi, Imo, and Nasarawa State. The Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Mr. Lateef Fagbemi, SAN, appeared as the sole defendant in the matter. The AGF did not oppose the Anambra State's request to pull out of the case. 16 states of the Federation had approached the Supreme Court to challenge the legality of the establishment of the EFCC. Let's bring you more perspective as far as this is concerned, but this time a legal practitioner, politician, and governance policy analyst, Mr. Daniel Bwala, has accused governors of attempting to destroy the country's democracy with a suit against the EFCC. Mr. Bwala, a former member of the People's Democratic Party, believes the move signals the governors' plot to frustrate democracy in the country. He said governors have not done much in developing their states and are pushing the responsibility of governance to the federal government. He accused them of being masterminds in some corruption cases in Nigeria, and thus the recent push for scrapping of the EFCC. He spoke earlier today on our program, The Morning Brief.
Even if a state is undertaking prosecution of a case in the United States of America, the minute the FBI takes interest in that case, the FBI takes over the matter. And there has not been conflict in the US. That is the same thing that you find in Section 172 or 75 of the powers of the Attorney General to either institute, to take over, or to discontinue a case. That exercise of power has not prejudiced the interests of other bodies such as EFCC, police, or any other law enforcement within the federal government. The governors in Nigeria, they are making concerted effort to destroy this democracy. I have said when President Tinubu started, when these allocations started moving, when nobody was looking at the responsibility of the federating unit in administering governance, when all pressures were pushed and directed at President Tinubu, I said that we have taken our minds and attention from the fact that this allocation we are talking about, majority of this allocation goes to state, and the development is at the state level and local level, and nobody cares to look at governors and probe them on their affairs. Do you know today, any protest that is conducted, it is not directed at governors. They are the majority of what constitute our governors in the framework of today.
So that's the perspective of legal practitioner Mr. Daniel Bwala on this particular issue of EFCC versus the governors of some of the states of the Federation, about 15 of them also, but we understand Anambra has pulled up. Let's expand this issue further. We've been joined in the program by a senior advocate of Nigeria, Mr. Kayode Adeluola. He joins us via Zoom. Mr. Adeluola, thank you so much, sir, for coming on the program.
Thank you very much.
I know the case is a subject of adjudication at the Apex Court, so maybe we'll just walk around the periphery of what is playing out eventually without maybe touching the merits of the case. But just a bit of a touch here and there is basically the governor saying, if you have to adopt any convention that is outside Nigeria to be part of the Committee of Nations, you have to respect Section 12 of the Constitution that talks about treaties have to go through the Houses of Assembly. On the other hand, the National Assembly is relying on Section 4, subsection 2 of the Constitution that gives them power to make laws for the good government of the state, especially on the exclusively. So it's an argument here and there. Even Mr. Femi Falana and Mr. Agbakoba have argued about this. Mr. Femi Falana cited Section 15, subsection 5 of the Constitution that gives the state the power to kill corruption and all of that. I don't know, where do you stand on this particular issue?
Thank you very much for asking. The truth is, we have to make up our minds what we exactly want as a nation. Do we want good governance and to abolish corruption? Or do you want to become academic about the process? As a legal practitioner, I believe that we should stick to the laws, and respect the Constitution. The fundamental objectives, as illustrated in the Constitution, in Section 15.5, which you mentioned that my learned colleague, Mr. Femi Falana, mentioned, says categorically that one of the objectives of government, political objectives, is for the eradication of corrupt practices within the state. Now, if that is an objective, then we must go head on. There cannot be half measures. The question then again is, what are our economic objectives? If you look at Section 16 also of the Constitution, it talks about the even distribution of wealth and the means of production. That means looking at that vis-a-vis the provision of Section 15.5 that talks about corruption and the duty of the state to abolish it. We must realize that there is an enormous task on the hands of government to establish agencies that will do this work. Aside from that, the Constitution already places in the hands of the federal government via the National Assembly to make laws for the good governance of Nigeria. Those are general principles, general provisions of the Constitution. Aside from that, the Supreme Court has had the opportunity in Shema versus the Attorney General of the Federal Republic of Nigeria to state, when the issue about the ICPC Act came up before them, to say that the National Assembly has the power to legislate the establishment of such agencies for the eradication of corruption in our system. I do not think there can be any difference in the establishment of the EFCC. We may say, for example, that, well, the House of Assembly of a state has the power to establish, promulgate laws for good governance in their respective states and pass thereof. But the federal government has the power to legislate through the National Assembly, and where there is any inconsistency in legislation of the state and that of the National Assembly, we know which one takes precedence. I do not think the House of Assembly will have the powers to legislate the EFCC out of their states. We must determine as a people to recognize that corruption is eating deep into the very fabric of our nation. We have a constitution that says the National Assembly can legislate matters relating to corruption and can legislate all manner of matters, especially those in the exclusive legislative list, as well as those which are concurrent. So where then is the fault? I think from the pronouncement of the Supreme Court in Shema versus the Attorney General and a host of other decisions, the EFCC is very well within its rights and authority to try cases involving past governors who have been seen to do things which are against the very essence of our Constitution, the political objectives and the economic objectives. That's where I stand.
Let us a few more questions. Some are saying that this is corruption fighting back in the allusion, because if you look at the origin of this, the ping pong, the embarrassing scenario that we've seen between the EFCC as well as Governor Yahaya Bello, which is a state. The state actually instituted this suit before other states join in. Is that what you see as well? And that's one question. Maybe the second one is also to see that, don't you think the governors also have a merit of saying, maybe let's not throw the baby with the bathwater, but legality is legality. If we want to get things done, let's get things done. If the law says it has to be done via a federation system, according to Section 12, why are we using fear to establish this at the end of the day? That is, if there's a merit in the argument from your point of view. Would you respect to them?
Well, let me take the first one, whether corruption is fighting back. Let's face it, if governors have done their jobs well and they have used the revenue of states for the benefit of the people, they will have no reason to fear EFCC. And so I have no doubt in my mind also that there must be some people who are amongst those who are fighting against the EFCC, who just represent corruption, fighting back against the FCC. But aside from that, forgive me, what was the second question which you asked?
Yes, I was talking about even the popular opinion or maybe extrajudicial conversation, maybe pointing to the fact that, oh, these governors are fighting back because for their own personal selfish interest, because they don't want to be probed. Even if they have their own anti-corruption agency, how effective is it? Because when you look at how they have managed state resources from local government to their houses of assembly, it calls to question how those institutions within their state can be worked on. But I was referring you back to the legalese of the matter, which is, I think that was even their first prayers, that if you have to domesticate anything, follow the law. I think that is their first argument.
Now, the question is, what are we domesticating? We have laws which abhor stealing. Let's call it the very basic name that it is, stealing. They will talk about embezzlement of public funds. We'll talk about corruption in all its ramifications. If we have a state governor taking the revenue of a state for his own personal use, or in fact a president taking the revenue of the federal government for his own personal use, it is wrong. It is very wrong. We had a military head of state who took so much money that we have recovered so much from him to use for infrastructure, to use for other purposes. That shouldn't be the case. So governors cannot in one breath say they want good governance. Governors cannot say they want their own fair allocation from FAAC. Governors cannot also choose and desire to ride roughshod of the local governments on beneath them, and at the same time say, in other words, that no one can challenge them and no one can question their authority. We cannot continue that way. There's no. The truth is, it's not about domesticating international conventions. We have a duty as a sovereign entity to have legislation for the good governance of our country. Good governance is also has part of it. The whole idea of ensuring that the assets of a state are used for the benefit of the citizens of that state. The assets of the federation are used for the benefit of the citizens of the federation. We must not allow governors to continue to take funds and revenue of the state for their own personal use. We must stop it.
Point to land on this particular issue. Senior Advocate Umas, thank you so much. Always coming through even at short notice, because this conversation is not, I think the hearing is today. We're going to get the judgment eventually, because there are precedents to this as far as the law at the Supreme Court level is even concerned. Let's see how it plays out and see what we can make out of the situation. Must thank you, Mr. Kayode.
I'm also keen on seeing what the outcome will be.
Yeah, well, I'm as curious as you are. I want to see how that plays out, because someone has even said this is a threat to democracy. But let's see. We can't preempt the court. The court has to make its final decision. So wait and see, and
Indeed.
we hope for the very best. Thank you, Senior Advocate, for coming on the program.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to other stories. And one of the big ones, before we get to a very second conversation, we'll be heading to Ebonyi State to find out exactly how the government of that state is faring as far as development is concerned. But first, let's tell you that the federal government panel constituted to probe bribery allegations regarding a controversial cross-dresser, Idris Okunaye, popularly known as Bobrisky, says the social media sensation served a 6-month jail term in prison but enjoys several privileges. A member of the panel, Dr. Uju Agomon, who read the initial reports of the probe by the Ministry of Interior, said the panel did not, in their words, find any evidence just for suggesting that Mr. Okunaye slept outside the custodial center during the period of his imprisonment, which was from April the 12th to August the 5th, 2024, which is a 6-month correctional sentence with the usual remission applicable. Dr. Agomon said during this period, Bobrisky was moved from the Kuje Custodial Center to Medium Security Custodial Center in Kirikiri, Apapa, Lagos, and then to the Maximum Security Custodial Center, from where the cross-dresser was discharged after completion of his sentence. But that's the update. There's an update to this story, by the way, that Bobrisky was arrested earlier today, somewhere around Semeboda. In their words, they say he was fleeing the country. So that's the latest update. But let's head to Ebonyi State, where we have joining us as we talk about what is going on there with the Commissioner for Information, Mr. Jude Okpo. Mr. Okpo, thank you so much for coming on the program. All right, if you can hear me, okay, if you can unmute for a moment, sir. If you can just unmute so that everyone can hear you. Can you hear me now, sir? Hello? Can you hear me, sir?
Hello?
All right, I think we can hear you. Okay, so let's get straight to it. I want to touch on a few issues. Maybe I start with education. I saw a report that has to do with the education ranking from edurank.com that ranked Ebonyi State University 36th in Nigeria and over 5,000 and something in global rating as far as that particular rating is concerned. Are you privy to this ranking? Does it reflect what is going on in the education sector in your states, or you have a contrary or an opposing position as far as this is concerned?
Yes, we are aware of that report, and let me state it very clearly that that report was a fallout of the situation that we inherited on the ground. And I want to tell you that if the people that started with the responsibility of assessing our universities are to visit again, having placed, all that have been done within the time frame of this administration on the ground, I'm sure that the result of that report is going to be different from what we have right now. Because when we came on board, honestly, the condition of the state-owned university was not something to write home about. That necessitated most of the lecturers seeking greener pastures, in other institutions. But His Excellency moved quickly, to arrest and reverse the situation. And I can tell you that right now, life has been restored, and a lot of incentives have been put in place, both for the academic, non-academic, and even the students themselves. And particularly, there was an increment in the subvention accruable to that university that was, moved from 150 million to 280 million as we speak to you right now. So if the assessment, people that are assessing NUC and the rest of them are to come back right now, the result is going to be different.
So I know that the ranking bordered around research outputs, academic publications, and other citations and all, but it's surprising. This is clear failure as far as education is concerned. So if you were to rank your states right now, I know you may not have the luxury of oversight across every other state. How much of the effort of the Mwifuru administration has moved the needle as far as this is concerned? You talked about people jackbuying, that's what we use here. How has that reduced? What have they done to make them stay?
Let me use that indices. Before we came the advent of His Excellency Professor Bonawifuru, education sector was receiving one of the least in allocation in state budgeting. And in fact, let me even say that it was a single-digit budgeting. And without enough financing, you can agree with me that nothing much can be done in terms of these areas you've highlighted. And under this administration, education have actually taken its pride of place, to the extent that right now in 2024 budget, education, gathered in about 22% of the state budget. And that has also been matched with a lot of releases. A lot of things have been done, even not only improving on the existing, structures in the university, boosting the morale of the teachers, and also increasing awareness, reducing the burden of, cost of education on the shoulders of parents across the state. The state is also taking it a step further to also widen the scope, of educational accessibility by improving, developing two other state-owned universities. I'm talking of the RCT University of Perepe and also the Aerospace Engineering University in Ezra. And most importantly, maybe you are aware that outside what is happening at the tertiary level, the primary and basic and secondary education, level is also, getting its own attention. The state is right now, we are constructing 22 number classroom blocks in 39 locations in the state. That is for the secondary school level. For the primary school, we're also constructing 26 number, that is 2 per local government, of 12 classroom blocks for the primary secondary schools. And most recently, the state, did something that...
If I'm a button, so that I can... Just a minute, Mr. Okpo, if I'm a button, my apologies. So I can take... Maybe let's move away from education quickly. I took a look at the dependency percentage of your state on federal allocation. It's a small state. I think you're barely about 2 million or 3 million. And your state is one of those states that if we pull out FAC and say, sort yourself, it will go belly up. It will go insolvent, because when you are 60% dependent on federal allocation, a lot of creativity is required for you to give that balance. So we have to look at the IGRO. How much have you generated? So what is the shape of your IGRO? Because even Nigeria is trying to look for a way to be off oil, which is our cash cow. So states as well have to begin to think of a way to be less dependent on the federal, even as everybody looks forward to a day of restructuring. What is the government of Governor Nwifuru doing to repurpose and reposition the internally generated revenue of the state? And where is it at the moment? Because that is going to be able to sort out your wage bill.
Yes, honestly, in as much as we are doing enough to show up the internal generated revenue in the state, we are also, looking at the human angle without necessarily inflicting a lot of, burden on the citizens of the state. Yes, in terms of IGR, the state recently launched e-ticketing, a platform to make sure that, the technology is also inculcated in the process of IGR in the state, and to forestall a lot of leakages, that used to be a lot in terms of internal generated revenue. Yes, we may not be where we want to be, but there's been a lot of a tremendous improvement in terms of IGR, from the policies that have been put in place in terms of smart, IGR, ticketing, and the rest of them.
I must thank you so much for coming on the program. Look, when it comes to issues of states and how well their finances are doing, there's a lot to talk about, because at the end of the day, if you're not doing the much you can, I'm trying to look for the revenue you generated. I think that if I get it, I'll get back to you. But I must thank you so much, Mr. Jude Okpo.
Let me
just for a moment. I wanted you to, yes, I remember what I wanted to say. I wanted you to tell me exactly how much is the IGR of the state at the moment. I just have 30 seconds.
Okay, I may not have the figure, but what I just want to let us know that there has been a very tremendous improvement from what we inherited, from the past administration. And that is why a lot of, ground has been covered. Like I didn't tell you that, in terms of education, the state is, sending about 1,000, young graduates of first class and second class upper, to go and study, in Ivy universities in UK.
All right.
700 in the local universities. So this cannot be done. All
right.
Without an improvement in the idea, because you are aware.
My apologies.
For foreign allocation.
My apologies. I must thank you so much, Mr. Jude Okpo, Ebonyi State Commissioner for Information. Thank you, sir, for coming on the program.
You're welcome, please.
All right, just before we go, we can tell you that the Supreme Court has reserved judgment in the suit filed by the 16 states challenging the constitutionality of the laws establishing the Efcc and 2 others to a date to be communicated to parties. So that is the story we've been waiting for, as we'll get the date when the judgment will be delivered. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. I'm Jeffrey Uzangoth. You've been served on Lunchtime Politics.